Wilson did fight mental disease and drug abuse for many years. There's bad news in the music world today. Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys has died. A lot of people have said nice things about Brian Wilson, the man who wrote some of rock's most famous songs. A few hours later, people started to talk about him, but not because they were sad. They were talking about how much money he left behind, and no one knows who will get it. The whole estate is in a fight, which includes songs, copyrights, real estate, shares, and long-term contracts. The will has not been made public. There are doubts about the guardian. There is a fight between the kids. Wilson was being watched closely while he was getting medical care and money. No one was ready because everything happened so fast, and everyone knew that this wasn't just a gift, it was the start of a tough conversation. A lot of trustworthy financial sources say that his overall net worth before he died was more than $100 million. It's not just the result of a long career, it's also the result of many big property transfers in the last few years of his life. Copyright for old songs like Good Vibrations, God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice, and a number of songs from the albums Pet Sounds and Smile brings in the most money. Not only are these songs available on CDs, but they are also constantly showing up on streaming services, in ads, and on TV shows. It sounds like the Beach Boys are singing about being here because it's free. Brian Wilson and the other Beach Boys members made a big deal in 2021 when they gave Universal Music Publishing Group some of their music rights. Even though no official numbers were given, it is thought that this deal is worth around $50 million. Wilson also had a lot of money from his singing career and owned several valuable homes in California. One of these was the Beverly Hills home he shared with his late wife Melinda Ledbetter. Brian Wilson, a famous member of the Beach Boys, lived in this Beverly Hills house. There are 6 in the farm. The house is not only where family memories are kept, but it is also said to have been the hub of his business for many years. He also owns a piece of Brother Records Incorporated, the business that takes care of the Beach Boys song library. The business owns a huge amount of copyright and trademarks that bring in a lot of money every year. But because of how much he left behind, his funeral was anything but quiet. People and the media were first interested in Wilson's death because his family hadn't made any official comments about his will. This made people think that Wilson may have died before his estate was finalized or updated, after the death of his wife in January 2024. In that situation, the people who had been his executives, like Leanne Hard, his financial advisor, and John Sever, her public relations manager, kept organizing, which made his children say they didn't like it. The Wilson family has 7 kids. 2 of them, Carney and Wendy Wilson, are in the band Wilson Phillips, and are Brian's actual children from his first marriage to Marilyn Rovell. He has also taken in children from his relationship with Melinda. While Brian was being cared for by guardians in 2024, some family members wanted the court-appointed guardians to be watched over more closely. Even so, things calmed down while he was alive. When he died, questions that had been pushed down for a long time came to the surface, causing family members to have different views. Since the middle of June, several financial magazines have published investigative stories that raise questions about how Wilson's music rights were given to middlemen while he was in conservatorship. Brother Records has made big payments to third parties, but it's not clear what those payments were for. Because of this, some family members aren't sure if the gift they're about to get really represents its value, especially since royalties can keep coming in for decades. People need to own and control things in order to stay alive. Lawyers are trying to figure out if there is a will from after 2024 or if the law will decide how the assets are distributed. If there isn't a clear will, the court might have to step in and give the children their legal rights. But to do this, papers, proof, and arguments about contributions and ties to the late artist need to be carefully put together. Before Brian Wilson's multi-million-dollar wealth turned his kids against each other, he was fighting a quieter but just as fierce battle within himself. By the end of the 1960s, Wilson was definitely becoming less stable. He didn't show up in public very often, his writing got out of hand, and he slowly stopped being in the Beach Boys. By the 1980s, he lived alone with therapist Eugene Landy and was barely in touch with his friends, family, and co-workers. Landy not only gave Wilson medicine, but he also managed all of his personal and business affairs, including meetings, music choices, and his own money. Landy started to sign a management agreement that let him handle Wilson's work and money. A man who was having mental health problems was given full control by someone who was meant to be able to heal him. Brian's family couldn't get in touch with him for years because of this, and he described the situation as mental confinement. In 1991, Brian Wilson's younger brother Carl led a legal attempt to take away Lai's power. The court said Eugene Landy could no longer do anything to hurt Brian Wilson's life. These events marked Wilson's coming out of his darkest period, but what followed showed that it would take a long time for his mental scars to heal. Melinda Ledbetter came into his life soon after the event, first as a friend, then as a partner, and finally as a staff member. Melinda had worked in the entertainment business and knew how to help singers who were having mental health problems. She looked out for him, helped him, and was the most important thing in getting Wilson's writing and performing skills back. In 1995, they got married. At that point, Melinda had a say in every big choice Brian made in his personal and professional life. She pushed him to go back on stage and was his boss of money and publicist for almost 30 years. Wilson went on many solo trips, put out his own albums, and most importantly finished Brian Wilson Presents Smile, a full version of a project that hadn't been finished since the 1960s. Melinda helped him do all of these things. When Melinda died of cancer in 2024, it was a big deal. Wilson had to deal with a lot of problems right away because of this event. He lost the ability to take care of himself and make his own decisions after being identified with dementia. Wilson's family went to court in Los Angeles and asked for a formal guardianship to give him protection from health and financial risks. The motion was granted by the court in May 2024, and Wilson's longtime friends and co-workers, Leanne Hard, a financial manager, and Jean Severs, a publicist, were named co-guardians. Others in the family are worried about them because they are not connected by blood, even though they are both highly skilled professionals and close to the family. A number of children had asked that at least one family member be put under the team's shared care. However, court records show that the parties came to a tentative agreement to accept the guardianship structure as it was first suggested. Sources say there was a lot of talk going on inside the company during the review process, but no official objections were recorded. Every time Wilson's job was given to someone else, the tension that had been building up came back, and since he wasn't there was no one to help this time. It was now clear that there were questions and cracks that had been hidden. Not having Melinda would have made things even. Control was now based on following the law and having proof, not on trust. A lot of hearts are broken. Brian Wilson passed away at his home in Beverly Hills in the middle of June. He died when he could no longer clearly see what was going on around him. He had been living under full-time care and formal guardianship for more than a year. News of his death was posted on a family-run Instagram account with the words, "He passed away peacefully, but his legacy will live on." This short, seemingly simple post set off a wave of reactions from his family, fans, and former co-workers. Within the family, Brian's kids had different reactions. Carney Wilson and Wendy Wilson, his two biological children from his first marriage to Marilyn Revol, shared old pictures and tributes right away. People said he was the most inspiring person in their lives. The man who taught us to love music and be strong even though he had a weak soul didn't say anything about his assets or will, and he especially didn't say anything about the people he had chosen to handle his money in the last year of his life. Wilson's other children, both adopted and from his marriage to Melinda, have not said anything in public. Some have chosen to stay away from private services with the family, while others have shown up with them. According to someone close to the family, there have been disagreements behind the scenes about how to handle the estate. These disagreements have been about complicated copyright problems like brother record shares and licensing deals with big labels. What's most interesting is that Leanne Hard and Jean Severs, who were named co-guardians by the court and were directly responsible for protecting Brian Wilson's assets and healthcare in the last few months of his life, have been quiet. After his death, neither of them said anything in public. This has made people even less sure about the Forisimo Crinsage proper, being open about how Wilson was cared for and supervised before he died. In some news stories, legal experts have asked if a will that was written or changed while Wilson wasn't fully awake would still be legal. Wilson didn't want to be in the middle of a scandal, say people who knew him in his prime. But his long-running fights, huge wealth, and complicated court system made it inevitable. While fans mourn the death of a genius, those who are still alive have to face a harsh truth. Brian Wilson's legacy is not just music, it includes blame, divide, and pain that will last for a long time. Smarts locked up. People have said that Brian Wilson is the smartest musician to come out of America in the 20th century. Not only did his work with the Beach Boys change pop music, but it also changed the record business. But behind every complex harmony and soulful melody was a man who was fighting an unending war with himself. Wilson began writing songs in California when he was a teenager. He formed the Beach Boys with his brothers and other friends. The group quickly topped the charts thanks to their beautiful melodies, bright harmonies, and forward-thinking sound. Their best work is their 1966 record Pet Sounds, which is on par with the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band in terms of influence. But Wilson's failure was caused by the same intense creativity that made him famous. Pressure to keep up his success, and a tense relationship with his dad. Wilson, who was the band's first manager, and untreated mental health problems put him in a long-term state of depression and worry. In the late 1960s, Wilson spent most of his time away from the band working on sounds in his head that he sometimes couldn't control in the studio. Wilson started taking stimulants and psychoactive drugs in the early 1970s to keep his mind stable, but because of that he lost touch with the real world over time. Wilson's family brought in Dr. Eugene Landy, a doctor who would change Wilson's life because they were worried about his health.
Landy was in charge of everything for almost 10 years, from prescribing drugs to managing funds and careers. Wilson couldn't talk to his family or make his own choices. Things stayed this way until 1991, when Land's influence stopped when the family won their case in court. When Brian Wilson met Melinda Ledbetter in the late 1980s, his life changed. Since she worked in show business, she knew he didn't need any more drugs. He needed a partner who could understand and stand up for him. She was more than just a wife to him. Wilson's whole life was also remade by her. He started to show up in public again while she was in charge, putting out solo albums, going to events, and even playing old songs he had previously denied. The Smile Project had been put on hold since 1967, but it was finally finished in 2004 by Brian Wilson. Give Smile. It wasn't just a piece of music, it was also a sign of coming back from the edge. Wilson played on big stages, won awards, and was seen as a real culture icon. Still, after each show, Melinda and her team of doctors made a lot of changes to her medications, made her rest, and kept a very tight grip on her schedule. Wilson's whole life was a battle between being smart and having bounds. He never had a long time when he was free from everything. There was always a system of monitoring, a wall of drugs, rules and compromises, even when he was on stage behind the spotlight. That was the worst thing that could have happened to many people. A thought that was always making new things couldn't walk by itself. That door to freedom was shut for good when the only person who could have kept him safe was gone. Heir to the family name. There is more than just thoughts left over after someone dies. Brian Wilson's legacy includes more than just his music. It also includes his copyrights, his real assets, his long-term contracts, and his unfinished legal debts. Who will mourn him the most is not the most important question after his death. The most important question is who will get to handle the money, the brand value, and the spiritual impact he left behind. As of the end of June 2025, the family's lawyers had not made a formal will, so California's statutory intestacy method would be used to decide how to divide up the assets. This means that Brian Wilson's total personal wealth could be split evenly among his 7 children. This includes his real estate, his shares in his music companies, and his ongoing royalties. But things aren't really as easy as they look on paper. Music rights are one of the most difficult things to deal with. There are hundreds of copyrighted works that Brian Wilson worked on directly. Some of these works were sold to big companies, like Universal Music Publishing Group. These deals were made while he was still alive, probably with the help or supervision of his guardians. If anyone has any concerns about whether or not these deals are legal or clear, the heirs can ask for audits and file lawsuits to get the gains split up again. Wilson has more than just patents. He owns real things like his house and a piece of Brother Records Inc., a company connected to the Beach Boys in which he still has a big financial stake. If he doesn't leave a clear will for how his shares will be split, his children will have to discuss or agree to have the court decide how much his estate is worth and how it will be split. People in the business say this is going to be the most controversial part because who owns the shares will affect not only his income but also who gets to decide how his art is used in the future. None of the children have said in public that they want to be in charge of the whole property. People who have been paying close attention to the Wilson family think that some members try to keep the legacy within the family, while others may be willing to work with big entertainment companies to make more money. There is a chance that this will lead to a disagreement between those who want to protect the spiritual value of music and those who want to make money by commercializing it. Wilson was in conservatorship for a while, but the agents and lawyers who worked with him during that time may continue to run his estate until the court makes a final decision or a legally binding will is given and accepted. If there aren't any clear instructions or an uncontested will, they have temporary power to handle the estate's assets, keep contracts in order, and keep an eye on money issues. But this temporary setup can make the whole process of changing who owns and controls the estate more difficult and take longer. The situation is made even more complicated by the fact that Wilson's original works continue to bring in royalties and money even after he has died. These earnings are usually given out once a month or every 3 months, based on the publishing and licensing agreements. They need to be carefully managed, accounted for, and distributed in line with current contracts and possible future legal outcomes. Because of this, settling the estate can take a long time and involve court battles, financial checks, and claims that might not agree from different parties. Should what I just said bring up memories, ideas, or feelings for you, please don't hesitate to like, share with other music fans, and subscribe to the channel to keep up with the stories behind the scenes. Your comments connect the past to the present and help us remember principles like these.